Hey guys, welcome back to our top 10 tips. This is the second part of this two-parter. So this is the top 10 tips for new bands, but we're carrying on from where we left off with the last one, with part one. So this one, we're going to cover everything from your first gig up until when you guys get to touring level. So here we go with our top 10. So number one is band agreement. So not a lot of bands will know when they're starting out that band agreements actually exist. What they are, it's kind of like a contract. The whole band sign it, but what it does is it lays out. I wouldn't say rules, but it's different clauses that will trigger if anything was to happen. So if a band member leaves. Obviously, you get to a point where if you're touring, if you're making money, obviously money comes into it. So you need to know where everyone stands when it comes to anything in the band. If the band split up, what happens? If a member leaves, what happens? And it's kind of an area that gets overlooked. But we thought that it was important to get a band agreement done. As we, when we start getting to a serious level. We had one, so don't overlook it. There's some free resources out there that you can take a look at getting one done. Get some advice. There's a lot of people out there who will offer advice. There's a lot of people who will offer their services, whether it be professional. But yeah, get a band agreement and make sure everyone knows exactly what the situation is.
And tip number 2 is lawyer for contracts. So following from Rich's point about band agreements, contracts are a big part of the music industry. You're going to be signing contracts for, if you get a manager, obviously a record deal. There's all sorts of contracts out there. So it's best to seek legal advice whenever you sign anything. I know it can be a daunting thing because we think lawyers, it's going to be a huge expense, but it's definitely worth it to protect yourselves and even to know exactly what you're signing for in the contract. I mean, we know some contracts can have language that us musicians we don't quite understand. So if you get a good lawyer to go through everything, explain what everything means, so you can make the right decision on whatever you sign. So definitely something to think about is getting legal advice for any contracts you sign.
So that brings us on to tip number 3. And this is where, in the first part of this series, we talked about a single and picking the song to be the lead single. But now you'll have gotten to the stage where you want to release a full product, whether it be an EP, which tends to consist of, anywhere between 3 and 6 songs, or if you want to do a full featured album. Now, the importance of this is obviously it showcases what you do as a band, but also when you start gigging, people are going to want to check you out when they're not seeing you perform live. If you're supporting a band, and you end up playing in front of a larger crowd than you're used to, then hopefully you want the people to go away thinking they were a great band. But also what you want them to do is be able to go onto YouTube, or you want them to be able to go onto Spotify, or you want them to pick up a CD from the merch stand. So it's super important that you have something ready to go so you can hit the ground running and you can keep that momentum going. So think about EP or album, and a lot of that is going to come down to the budget as well. If you can't afford to do a full album, then don't worry, do an EP, because then you can always go and do a second EP as well, or you can merge those 2 EPs together. That's exactly what we did when we first started. We did an EP, and then we had the intentions of going and recording a second, but instead what we did is we put the new songs onto the current EP, and we marketed that as an album, and that worked out really well for us. But it's super important that you get a full product ready to go, and a good quality one as well. So think about who you're going to record with, where you're going to record, and how many songs you are going to record. Super important. Make sure that people have got something to listen to.
So tip number 4 is merchandise. We think it's super important that when you first start gigging, that you've got at least one t-shirt or a CD or a badge or something with your name on that the fans can take back and actually remember your name. They might remember your music and what you look like, but they might not remember your name. And even if you've got just one simple t-shirt, make sure that merch stand looks absolutely amazing. Get lights, get whatever you want, so it stands out in the dark at the back of a venue. You know, you want the spotlight on your merch. Also, if you can get someone to man your merch, albeit a family member or whoever, whilst you're playing, then that's great. Also, a tip would be after you come off stage, go to your merch, meet your fans. That way you get to know your fans a bit better and you can interact with them, and yeah, it should be a winner.
So tip number 5 is knowing your local scene. So to begin with, we'll go with venues. So you'll get to know the promoters, get to know the staff. You know, if you know the promoter, then you can lead on to knowing the local bands playing in your area, which is important because they'll be the ones that will, especially in the early days, try and help you get onto local supports and then just expand. So yeah, definitely knowing your local scene is very, very important.
So tip number 6 is know your audience. We think as a band it is super important to know your audience, and it's super important to interact with them on and off stage, whether that be online, at the merch stand, outside the venue, wherever. It's always good to have a chat with your fans and just to know what they're doing, and vice versa really. They want to know all about you, and I think it's great that you get to know each other and you become almost like a family. They're going to be the ones that are going to be championing your band, telling their friends about you. So I think it's super important that you get to know your audience.
So tip number 7 is make an impact, and this is kind of with your first show. So your first show is probably the most important show, or one of the most important shows you'll ever play, because it's your first mark as a band, and getting your first impression that you're going to make to an audience. So you definitely want to make it a good one. So it goes without saying, make sure you're well rehearsed. All the band is, sober. I know it's tempting for before a show to drink, but us personally as a band, we don't drink before a show. You just want to make sure the band is firing on all cylinders. Basically, when people leave that venue, whether you're supporting, if you're maybe doing a headline, whatever you're doing, you want them to leave thinking or saying to their friends, "Did you check out that band? I mean, they were crazy." You want to leave that mark, because if they go away and tell their friends, then their friends will come check you out, and then they'll go away and tell their friends, and you build up an organic fan base. So make that impact with your first show, definitely.
So tip number 8 is budget and reinvesting. So to begin with, for budget, you need to obviously have a budget, so you know how much a video shoot, photo shoot, recording, a tour is all going to cost. And then that leads to reinvesting. So your merch, your ticket prices, your fee, whatever. You need to make sure all of that goes back into a band pot or kitty, whatever. A lot of bands will just take the money, split it how many ways, and then later on down the road have to then put that money back into the band, which it doesn't help, and it doesn't make the band or the business sustainable.
So tip number 9 is become a business. And I don't mean have the mentality of being a business, you know, because that should always be in the back of your mind anyway. But I mean actually become a business and register. So when you have money coming in, that's an income, that's a revenue, and that needs to be shown somewhere. So the best way to do that is with a business, whether it be a partnership between the band members, whether it be a limited company, that is totally up to you. And you've got to figure out what's the best route for you guys to take. But it's super important because, you know, it's actual money that's coming in, whether it be from touring, merchandise, music revenue, that sort of stuff. It needs to all come into a central location and be accounted for. So, yeah, have a think about the best way that suits you in the band, whether a limited company or a partnership or an LLP, a limited liability partnership. Just have a think about that and don't delay. As soon as you have money coming in, you should then start thinking about actually becoming an actual business.
Tip number 10 is a booking agent. So the booking agent is a very important person you're going to work with in your band life. They are responsible for getting you onto gigs, festivals, support slots, so they are one of the most important people in the music industry. Getting on a good booking agent's roster will get you onto good shows, on with some support slots with some big acts, which in turn can get you in front of more people. Obviously, the more people you get in front of, you know, the more scope you have to build your fan base, and that's what it's all about. So definitely a good booking agent is worth considering. So that's it. Top 10 tips for new bands part 2 is done. Thank you to everyone checking out our video. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, and definitely click on the little bell so you're notified by any future videos that we do. But thanks again, guys, for tuning in.